I saw the letter from your dad. You know, I thought he'd be coming home this time too.
Sadie is the story of a 13-year-old girl who lives at home with her mom while her father's off serving repeated tours of duty. And even though he has promised to come back over and over again and not followed through, she loves her dad and she wants him to come home and make their family whole again.
He just got over me.
Maybe the letters are supposed to be to both of us.
She's sort of led herself to believe that he's there because he needs to be there and that he wishes he could come home. And then when her mom starts dating this other guy, Sadie gets really angry because she doesn't want anyone taking the place of her family, her perfect family in her mind. And so she uses war tactics, basically, because that's the only thing she knows how to do. But she has to realize that sometimes violence has really negative effects.
I think many times as adults, with adult-like situations, we forget what's going on in a kid's head. And we can kind of brush it off or try to, you know, glaze over it or whatever and think they'll be fine and forget about it. But there's a lot going on in that head and you have to bring attention to it. You gotta, or it can, you know, get to an unfortunate place like it does in this film.
I think the thing that drew me to the project was just how well drawn all the characters were. I really got a good sense of everybody, and I loved, even though I'm not in a lot of those scenes, the relationship between the kids, between Sadie and Francis, I just thought was so authentic and sweet.
He's beaten you up, what, how many times? 9. I play Francis, and my relationship with Sadie is, we're best friends, and she takes up for me if somebody's bullying me and stuff.
Hey! Sophia's the nicest little girl, and then as soon as she becomes Sadie, her whole energy shifts and she becomes a different person, literally. And it's very hard to do that, especially for a kid.
I feel like I need to tell you that these horrors that you're writing about, they got extreme consequences.
What I like about playing Bradley is I think he's a figure in Sadie's life that does see things that nobody else is seeing. And so, and I do think there's those people in kids' lives that are like, there's something going on there that the parents might be ignoring. So I like having that kind of sight into her.
I don't even get why they're teachers in the first place.
The Dee character is cool. There's kind of a moral compass to the movie, and Sadie checks in with him now and again.
I'd keep it simpler. Frogs, squirrels, and whatnot. Men are tough. I'd give it a little more time before starting on them.
He's kind of this gruff old retired guy that's kind of mean to his daughter but loves her, kind of the overseer of the trailer park. He does have kind of sage advice for people, and he's just funny.
You can stop sucking it in.
I love you too, Dad. The reason I wanted to be a part of Sadie is because I feel like this character is a new narrative that is not always told in this industry. It's also of a woman in a story that does not comment on race or size. Because this is the world that we live in. This is what we are. We live together. We are together. You know, there's big women that get love too, and there's Black women that live in trailer parks as well. We kind of have an idea that most African Americans are just kind of living in like a hood or the ghetto, and to get to bring another setting to this woman's life, to show many more layers to this, was really thrilling.
You know, my character's suffering from an addiction to painkillers, and this is just one story being told about this, but it's happening everywhere, and it's happening to all kinds of people.
I've had a lot of friends and family members who have been caught up in opioid addiction. I thought John Gallagher Jr. had a really difficult job in trying to play somebody who's both charming and has a lot of flaws. To see a well-rounded human who also is struggling with an opioid addiction, for me was very, very gratifying.
I just kind of see him as a good guy with a good heart, but he's up against some personal demons and in a lot of pain and dealing with a lot of fear, and just kind of trying to do the best that he can with what he has.
In a lot of traditional war movies, there's a focus on a character who's on the front, who's in war and battle, and they're writing letters home. In the case of Sadie, we have a 13-year-old girl whose father is deployed in the military overseas, and she's writing him letters from her battlefront at home.
I'm a veteran myself, and when Sadie's dad doesn't come home, when he does come home, he redeploys. That's a political statement right there, because war is hell.
Well, it came out of a desire to add to the conversation around violence in this culture and what does to kids who are growing up and sort of taking in all of that information and what it does to their sense of right and wrong. And so I came up with the story of Sadie to talk about it.
Permanent record? We're kids, Francis.
You know, I feel like we've certainly had a lot of films that talk about, you know, how do young men and boys deal with war? Like, how does this idea of perpetual war affect men? And I think one of the reasons why I was attracted to the script and this idea that Megan had was about talking about how that affects young women as well and girls. It's like, what does that do to a young girl if you think that it's an okay way to solve problems and to convince people and change people's mind by bringing violence into the situation, by trying to, you know, force your will on other people?
But it's something that I think kids don't have the capacity to truly, fully understand. And it's filtered down, and Sadie really sees that, experiences it, and experiments with it.
She knows what she's doing, she knows what she wants, she thinks she knows how to get it. But the whole story is about her realizing that maybe the way she does things isn't the right way, always.
Over the years as we've been making the project, it's only become, I think, more relevant in our current political times. It's really interesting, also sad and terrifying how much more relevant this film has become since we first tried to start making it.
Every film, I feel like, is a political film. It's not necessarily always a positive political takeaway or even an intentional political takeaway, but I think every film impacts its audience in some way. So if you can create something with intention and talk about human beings with empathy and sort of encourage your audience to approach characters with empathy, then that will translate into the world, and hopefully we can sort of deal with each other in general with a little bit more empathy, which would go a long way to solving some of the divisiveness that we're having in this country, I think.
I think Megan's a force. She's a force. It's so funny working with her because she really thinks like an AD, she thinks like a director, and she thinks like a producer, sometimes all in the same moment. People have an immense amount of respect for her.
I love Megan. It's really nice because she's very specific about what she wants, but she's not nitpicky, you know? So you feel like you have a lot of freedom, but you definitely know that she's getting what she wants, so it's the best of both worlds. Yeah.
She just doesn't have an ego, she doesn't have attitude. To have a creative environment, you need to have that safety where nobody's walking on eggshells, so you can kind of do your best and you can be free to have ideas and stuff. And she definitely nurtures that environment.
Sorry, I was in Keith mode.
It's not just a film about a little young girl named Sadie. It's a film with statements in it. It's a film with things that make you reflect, you know, and make you think about yourself. Maybe help you to be a better person.
It's really a cool story about a young girl and her struggles dealing with her family and where she's growing up. It's a really well-written story, and I think people will gravitate towards her character, feel for her, and feel for the predicament that they're all in.
You know, at the end of the day, I think it's a really beautiful film that deals with some of our larger societal problems, but in this very, you know, small, individualized, you know, personalized way that's authentic.
I think that anybody who enjoys watching explorations of human relationships should go see this movie, because there's just so much in it. There's a mother-daughter relationship, a mother-son relationship, relationships between the kids. There's a new love affair, which I think is very sexy and romantic. It explores a lot of different things about what it is to be human. If I wasn't in it, I would see it immediately. I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to see that. I think it's really special.